Michigan residents will soon be able to apply for an ID card to purchase medical marijuana. The Michigan Department of Community Health will begin taking applications Saturday. Patients need to show a doctor's note to get the card. The law approved by voters this past November allows patients with cancer, HIV, and glaucoma to receive medical marijuana. Saturday is the deadline for the state to come up with guidelines for medical marijuana in Michigan. And tonight, Brian is talking to someone who knows a lot about this issue. Brian?
Sue, Greg Francisco is the executive director of the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association. Greg, thanks for coming in. He came in from Paw Paw, where your organization's based. How many members?
We have about 3,000 members.
Okay. We've got the sign up now coming up where you can apply for one of these ID cards. The state's expecting 50,000 people to apply over the next 2 years.
That's correct.
How many in the first week are we looking at?
Well, we think that there are about 500 patients that currently have current IDs, valid IDs, that will be ready to turn in, about 500 within the first week.
Greg, it's my understanding, as the law sits, and the Michigan Department of Community Health admits as much, they say it's not perfect. It doesn't say anything about how you acquire the marijuana, where you buy it from, where you get the seeds if you want to grow it, because all of this is still illegal. That is a huge chunk, it seems to me, of policy or legislation that should be addressed. Why didn't they touch it?
Well, those are serious flaws in the law, and it has to do with the conflict between state and federal law. We were able to push the envelope on the possession and the medical, but when it came down to distribution, that was just a little bit too much.
Also, somewhat of a misnomer. Some people might think that the pot shops will be setting up here in the state like they do in California. That's not going to happen.
That will not happen. Our law does not allow for commercial distribution networks, dispensaries like California. Those are not allowed under Michigan law.
This is going to be up for review. This law will be up for review in a couple of years. What changes as it stands now would you like to see take place?
Well, we would hope that when the legislature does review the law in 2 years, that they would look at not-for-profit cooperatives. We don't want the pot shops like California. Instead, we would like to have a model that's based on community. Cooperatives, not-for-profit.
Medical marijuana. In November of 2008, a voter-approved Marijuana Act was passed in Michigan, making it one of 13 other states to legalize marijuana for medical use. To qualify for a medical marijuana card, a patient must have a doctor's recommendation to treat specific medical conditions such as cancer, glaucoma, HIV/AIDS, Crohn's disease, and several other chronic ailments. The act was written to protect marijuana patients and caregivers from prosecution, yet the issue raises other questions. For example, how does a patient obtain their medicine since it is still illegal to buy and sell marijuana? To answer this question, I decided to go to a local Compassion Club meeting, a place for marijuana patients and caregivers to network. One patient comments on what it's like obtaining his medicine.
My name is Anthony Williams, and I'm a patient of the Medical Marijuana Act in Michigan. I'm registered because I'm a qualifying patient for my arthritis in my shoulder, and I believe that marijuana is one of the safest medicines out there. Until there's dispensaries or until they can get a better system in place for caregivers, then yeah, it looks like I'm on my own. Right now, I'm still going the same route that I did for the years before it was legal. I still go to a street person who's got my medicine.
While states like California have a distribution model in place for providing marijuana, in Michigan the situation is different since there are no marijuana dispensaries.
What they did do in the law was write provisions in there where, quite frankly, you could go to Dude on the street and get it if you had to. But the idea is to promote you or your caregiver to grow your own marijuana so that you don't have to do that. Unfortunately, at the beginning, it's a matter of chicken or egg, which came first. It is still illegal in the state of Michigan to sell marijuana. It is still illegal in the United States of America to sell marijuana. You as a caregiver are not selling marijuana. What you are doing is you are providing gardening services, i.e. if you called an electrician into your house, a plumber, somebody like that, it's the same thing. You are providing a service. It is a service industry, gardening.
In Michigan, a caregiver can grow 12 plants per patient for up to 5 patients, or a possible total of 60 plants. They'll receive a caregiver's card for each one of their patients.
So that if by chance something should happen and they do encounter the law, they do have documentation to prove why they have marijuana in their possession.
In spite of this, medical marijuana is still lacking the necessary law enforcement and legal precedents.
You have all these, you have the oil, you have the auto, you have all these industries with these lobby groups. Marijuana doesn't really have a lobby group. And not only that, the politicians don't want to touch it because it can be absolute political suicide for them. And our politicians, quite frankly, don't care about you or me or anybody else. All what they really care about is their political future.
So why is marijuana perceived to be so harmful? There has never been a documented case of marijuana overdose. In fact, for a human being to die, they would have to consume approximately 63 pounds of marijuana in 1 hour.
You cannot overdose, and if you do, you will take a nap and you will wake up hungry. That's all that will happen.
Brian became involved in this issue for a very personal reason. Marijuana helped him survive a round of chemo that nearly killed him.
I laid on my couch for 3 weeks, with the exception of going to the hospital 3 times a week for fluid injections because I could not drink, much less eat or even think about eating. So on week 3, my roommate that lives with me came in and said, okay, we're all done with this experiment. Now it's time to make you better because you are dying. My boy came over and we smoked a joint, and 20 minutes later I was frying up a hamburger and literally salivating. I felt like my dog. I had drool running down the side of my lips because I hadn't eaten in 3 weeks, literally. And I ate that hamburger and I lived.
It's not the kind of record anyone wants to break. Reports of serious illnesses and deaths linked to medicine have hit an all-time high. That's according to the Institute for Safe Medication Practices, which has analyzed FDA data for a decade.
Resources, putting people in jail. I mean, I know myself in Florida, we have overcrowding. Well, they arrest a nonviolent criminal, they may be putting that person in jail and letting out a violent criminal. And all because of a weed that's been around for generations and centuries. And yes, nobody ever has died off of marijuana. Now, every drug that's approved by FDA and goes through all their rulings and all their studies and everything, every drug has, it's called an N something or other. It says if you take this much of it, you die. Okay, aspirin, everything. If you take this much of it, you die. That period. There's never been one that says for marijuana because no one's ever died off of it.
It recently found that from January to March, there were more than 20,000 reports of serious drug reactions, including over 4,800 deaths. That's not just a little more than usual, it's 38% higher than the previous year. 2 drugs are blamed in unusually large numbers. The blood thinner heparin, recalled after contamination was found, and the anti-smoking drug Chantix had more reports than the 10 best-selling brand-name drugs combined.
Take the first step. See your doctor and ask if prescription Chantix is right for you.
The FDA has already warned of psychiatric problems with Chantix and says it will take further action if warranted. Pfizer, which makes Chantix, says benefits outweigh the risks.
New worries tonight about the safety of America's water supply. In the first nationwide investigation of its kind, the Associated Press found that at least 41 million of us are drinking water that contains traces of prescription drugs.
Our planet is in desperate trouble. Earth is suffocating as large tracts of rainforest disappear. Pollution, poisons, and chemicals are killing people. These great problems could be reversed if we industrialized hemp. Natural biomass could provide all of the planet's energy needs that are currently supplied by fossil fuels. We have consumed 80% of our oil and gas reserves. We need a renewable resource. Hemp could be the solution to soaring gas prices. Hemp has a higher quality fiber than wood fiber. Far fewer caustic chemicals are required to make paper from hemp than from trees. Hemp paper does not turn yellow and is very durable. The plant grows quickly to maturity in a season where trees take a lifetime. All plastic products